Finally, I got a chance to watch Spider-Man Brand New Day, and it was epic in every sense of the word, from the cinematography to the acting to every element that combined to make it what it is. Indeed, epic is the word I will use to describe it. Yes, it ups the whole Spider-Man franchise a notch up that of the Marc Webb directed trilogy starring Tom Holland. That is not to say those are not good. They are really great films. But indeed, I would say that Spider-Man Brand New Day is better than the three ones. Indeed, Daniel Destin Cretton, the director of Shang-Chi, has really up himself and done a very great job with what this whole franchise is about. Indeed, I would say that it is a very high bar that the MCU, through the MCU, or yeah, Sony, indeed it's a Sony film, but definitely it sort of intersects with that of what's it called, the MCU. So definitely we can, in a way, call it an MCU Marvel film. And indeed, they've set a standard so high that it looks like if Marvel either does a film that doesn't match up to Spider-Man Brand New Day, it might be really a problem if the audience are not trooping in to go watch the film as others are doing with this particular one, this Spider-Man one. So there's a lot of elements in the film, and I'd like to share some of my thoughts on it. As a matter of fact, Spider-Man Brand New Day, for those who have been following the news, it's already broken so many records. But I will leave that for another day. But not only is it a critical darling for the critics, but also the highest rated movie on the popcorn meter by audiences from all over the world. It stands at a spectacular 98% on the Rotten Tomato popcorn meter, that is by the audience. And for the critics, it stands at 90. Initially it came in around 87, 89. I might be mistaken, but then it rather ended up stepping up a notch. And when we talk about the box office, it's fantastic. But just as I said, we'll be talking about that one later in the in another episode of the Film Mandates, where I perhaps do all the news surrounding this film and how it has become quite a very successful film. So first and foremost, let's just delve into a number of the things that made Spider-Man as spectacular as it is, as we are talking about it today. So just as you know, this is directed by Daniel Destin Cretton. If you perhaps have watched Shang-Chi, then and you loved it, definitely you're going to love this one as well. So if you haven't loved Shang-Chi, maybe you may not like it, but I can tell you for a fact, it is not just a superhero film that displays all the usual tropes that are found in a film of that nature, where superheroes are able to do all those antics and exhibit their superpowers on a scale that the ordinary man cannot do. But then it is also heavy. It's rightfully laden with emotional beats and then some quips here and there, which is well placed, not to make it overly comedic, but rightfully placed to balance the emotional moments in order to heighten those gravities, those gravity moments that you get to understand how powerful that is. So, just for you to know, most of the things I'll be talking about will be quite spoilers in the discussion of it. So, if you are one who wouldn't want the film to be ruined for you before you go watch it in the cinema, I would appeal to you to not watch it yet. Go to the cinema, watch it, and then later when you come back, you can come and take a look at this particular episode of Spider-Man, Brand New Day spoilery review. So I think you've been warned. Just as you can see in my lower thirds title, it says Spider-Man Brand New Day spoilers. So once again, you've been warned. So let's delve into it. So for those who have watched the trilogy of Spider-Man films within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you know that Tom Holland was in high school. Then uh, from the very first one, is it I'm forgetting the name, but Homecoming to is it No Way Home. I might be mixing the names, but we saw a progressive how progressive the relationship of Tom Holland and Ned and MJ ended up, growing. So MJ became the very best friend of Tom Holland, as well as what's it called? MJ became, sorry, Ned became the very best friend of Tom Holland, as well as MJ becoming the love interest of Holland. But when you delve into Spider-Man No Way Home, where we had the where we had the incursions, in the sense that it brought in the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man together with Tobey Maguire Spider-Man to fight a number of villains, particularly from the um, particularly from the Tobey Maguire universe. They they ended up having all these big setups in the film. But one interesting thing that happened is that at the end of Spider-Man No Way Home, if you haven't watched it, what happened was that eventually, because of the request, Spider-Man, that is Tom Holland Spider-Man, made of Doctor Strange to to let him make all those who know him forget who he was, eventually leading up to Spider-Man Brand New Day. None of the characters remember who Spider-Man is. That is Peter Parker. Nobody knows him. They could only remember that they've had encounters with him, particularly those that he has rescued as Spider-Man in the costume. But none of them can remember him as Peter Parker. So that is how this particular story begins, and it starts out with uh, sort of showing how lonely Peter Parker has become, because one way or the other he felt guilty, particularly for the troubles that he's brought into the lives of the people he he loves and having their life in his life, due to his ability or due to his persona as Spider-Man and his superpower. It's almost the same. It's almost it sort of emphasizes what Vision in Civil War said about how their very powers, superheroes' very powers actually sort of brings into the foreplay also super villains whose intent is to bring sort of a contention to their life. So it perfectly describes or embodies what Vision said in Spider-Man, in Captain America Civil War. So one of the key elements is that throughout this story, you have Tom Holland yearning and longing for the friendship that he has lost, and the MJ, and eventually he ended up getting to know where they were, and also um, sort of trying to reinstate his relationship with them. It's all happened differently, as with the what's it called, MJ. It happened a little different from the way he sort of got to remind Ned of who he was. So that's something that eventually, when you get to watch it, you may get to know how it all pans out. But one of the interesting thing is the fact that he really didn't want to reveal who he was as an individual to them, but it, it, he also didn't want to lie to them. But fast forward, the key elements here that most people have been talking about, I don't know whether, just be warned, it's a spoilery review, so kindly keep in mind that this may reveal things for you that you may not want to watch this particular episode until you have watched the film. However, one of the things that was had a lot of people talking is the fact that who is that character Sadie Sink is playing. So sorry, pardon me. I don't know why this is playing, but yeah. So I just want to, yeah, I'll just use the trailer to sort of highlight a number of the things I want to talk about in this. I don't know whether I have the, yeah. So this is the final trailer. Yeah. So everybody was talking about particularly which character Sadie Sink might be playing. And for those that have been speculating, and for those who may not even know anything about, well, for if you've been speculating, well, it's a spoiler review. Just take notes. If you don't want to watch it, please leave now because what I will say may ruin perhaps something for you that you wouldn't want ruined. So you've been warned. So the character Sadie Sink from the Stranger Things, I've been playing. Let me see if I can see. This is supposed to be the final trailer, so it doesn't really. Let me see. Let me see. Yeah. So you have Sadie Sink in the hood. Let me see. I wish I can. I think she wasn't in this final trailer, so pardon me. But for Sadie Sink character, where you have her in the hood, it's basically um, it's drum roll. She's playing the character of one mega or omega mutant in this particular film, and that is none other than Jean Grey. None other than Jean Grey. And the way and manner her power was shown in this film is on another level. Granted, I may not understand fully because my introduction into the universe of the X-Men or even the Marvel Cinematic Universe is through the films, not through the comics. So I may not understand all the elements in there. It may the way and manner she uses her power in the film might differ from what is in the books. And I may not even understand how really powerful she is. But comparatively to what I've seen so far, yes, when you watch the X-Men Last Stand, you had her exhibiting her power on another level where she was consumed by the Phoenix and all those things. So, those films that were made during the 20th Century Fox era. And here, she's not even gotten to that level yet. She's literally beginning in terms of discovering her powers. And she's literally at the very, beginning of knowing her full capabilities. However, in this film, the way and manner it was even used at that very early stages of her powers, the use of her powers, it is quite amazing. And the the I think overall, every actor in this film, particularly the bits, the background actors who all were 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 used to portray or to emphasize how powerful Jean Grey's powers were so they did so well in terms of their performance and it's amazing. You've already seen it in the trailers where you had characters, interacting with Tom Holland, and they all seem to continue the very conversation the previous individual may be having, just because the character of Sadie Singh, Jean Grey, is communicating through them, and she keeps sort of, in a way, transporting herself or her consciousness from one individual to another, just to antagonize Tom Holland's Peter Parker, and it's quite exciting, and she, she tried sort of possessing the mind just to discover who Tom Holland is. And Tom Holland at the very beginning prevented her from, accessing that information. However, at the end, there is a payoff to that, where this setup of an action has an equal opposite reaction, which was beautifully done and sort of wraps everything up and resolves every issue. But then the power of Jean Grey here is amazing. In the end, where you see, I don't know whether I'll be able to see this in this final trailer to show to you, but in the end, where her powers is fully manifested, you realize that now this is really an omega. Yeah, so this very scene, sort of this sort of shows how powerful of a mutant she is, an omega level mutant. And that is when her full powers and ability was unlocked. And when you get to watch the story, you get to understand why that is the case, because she's not just there to antagonize Tom Holland, but there for a reason, there to uh, in search of the sister that is missing. So it was really done well. I must say it was really done well, and the pacing is amazing. It moves at a very um, neck breaking pace that you are on the edge of your seat. And there's no dull moments in this particular film. I can assure you. And over 2 hour, 2.5 hours or two, I've forgotten the runtime, but every bit, every time here further develops and enhances the story. And that is why I said that it sort of ups the whole Spider-Man film up a notch compared to the previous three films set up in the cinematic universe. So it is quite amazing. And then beyond the scope of him trying to prevent Sadie Sink's character Jean Grey from causing harm, it led to a point where Jean Grey is just using sort of people to fight Tom Holland. So from the from people that may not necessarily even be superpowered people to the hand which we saw the ninjas who draped in red fighting Tom Holland, all were to an extent, not all out through, but to an extent, fighting, Jean Grey. And the action sequences are super. I mean, sorry, fighting Tom Holland. The hand were fighting Tom Holland, not the other way around. So because Jean Grey sort of, in a way, initiated that fighting sequence, and their fighting, formation is amazing. How they are able to fight as a single unit, almost like they are just one individual with the same perfectly synchronized mindset. It's beautiful. It's perfectly amazing, and this shows how indeed in the hands of Daniel Destin Cretton, who directed what's it called, Shang-Chi, was able to up his action sequences even much better here than what he did in Shang-Chi. That's not to say Shang-Chi's film is not deserving. It was really, really well done, I must say. But here it was of another level altogether. And I like the whole story of, you know, the Jean Grey, sorry, the whole story of MJ, how she finally discovered who Tom Holland is. And it was so nicely done. They had an instance where it was done at first, and you may think that finally, um, City, that is Zendaya's MJ has found out who Peter Parker is. They know the hidden identity of Peter Parker. I mean, of Spider-Man is that is Peter Parker through a kiss, but not knowing throughout that war period, it was just manipulation where that kiss was just to reveal um, um, to sort of it was just to make fun of Peter Parker, So it was Jean Grey all along manipulating Peter Parker, only for him to be so disappointed. But in the end, you know, Zendaya got to find out who Peter Parker was, and the heartbreaking moment was when even though she had found out. It's not like she found out through a letter. The previous letter that she Peter Parker wanted to read to MJ in the end at the end of Spider-Man No Way Home. She found it, read it, and understood who Spider-Man was, and that is Peter Parker. But the unfortunate thing is that it didn't come along with the memories. So it was difficult. It was a difficult moment when Tom Holland had confessed that he loves Zendaya, that is MJ, and then MJ only said that yes, in as much she appreciates everything, but she doesn't love him back, and that was heartbreaking. In the cinema, in the theater that I was, it was, you could feel how audiences were empathizing with Peter Parker at that very moment. But also throughout the entire film, there were pockets of fun moments that the whole audience reacted accordingly. Accordingly, it was fun. Others were, excited to even the discovery of Jean Grey made people excited for what is yet to come in the X-Men, movie directed by is it Jake Schreier? Um, yeah, I think Jake Schreier. Yeah, so pardon me for that, Jake Schreier. So it is quite an amazing film to watch. I may be mixing things up, pardon me, but it's just the excitement of watching it. I mean, I would wish I can even watch the second time to give you more of my thoughts on it. But one of the touching moments was the fact that when Peter Parker finally had a face-to-face encounter with Jean Grey, that moment was even prior to that moment, Jean Grey sort of encouraged Peter Parker to embrace who he was. If you realize in the trailers, there are times when it felt like Tom Holland was sort of changing because it looks like the arachnid, the Spider-Man, the spider DNA within him is completely taken over, and he had trying to find ways to suppress that DNA mutation. If you watch um, the trailer, you saw moments when he was interacting with um, uh, uh, sorry, Professor Mark Ruffalo's character, that is Bruce Banner, trying to find out how he's able to suppress the other, you know, persona, and he showcased how he was able to do that. So, in the same vein, Tom Holland was able to develop an inhibitor, but this time around, a very universal one that could dampen the power of any superhero. It doesn't matter who that was. So far as you attach it to the back of your head or something, it's able to suppress it, or you can even reduce the level of intensity that is. So Jean Grey sort of made him aware that no, you need to learn to embrace all parts of you. And at that moment, it was really, really, you thought in that brief moment, you would think that in embracing who he was now, due to the metamorphosis happening within his body, he was going to go completely evil. But the thing was, I mean, that moment was done so well. You were convinced that Spider-Man Peter Parker is now evil, only for you to realize that no, he's not. He's just a fusion of that aspect of him and him being Peter Parker. It was done brilliantly well, and it was indicated by how he had every right to perhaps kill one of the um, hand henchmen, but saved him at the last moment. At the last moment, and it was beautiful. But now back to the encounter with Jean Grey. It is such a very potent encounter, not in the way people would expect, not a fight, because Jean Grey is of another level altogether. She doesn't have to lay a hand on you to wreak havoc on you. But then what they did was that um, she wanted to get into the mind of Peter Parker, and Peter Parker sort of allowed it. And in that case, they happened to have a very deep conversational, a very deep moment, conversation that touched Jean Grey so much that she had to, turn 360, not after an incident with, you know, the one and only the Punisher. And listen, the Punisher's role in this film is quite amazing. You need to understand that the the chemistry between um, John Benthal's Punisher and I mean Tom Holland's Peter Parker or Spider Man is so amazing. The banter back and forth. It feels like an older brother and a younger brother, and how they relate to each other. It's so amazing, And John Benthal's character wasn't dampened in any way. You would think that, pardon me, you would think that this being a PG-13, they may want to sort of, downplay who he was. No, they kept it as it is, being violent, and he wasn't afraid to to come at you if he has to. And then, so they kept it there, but found ways and means of making it work so well in this film. So John Benthal's the Punisher character went all out as he really was, spared no horses to show who he really was, and that was amazing. And that is what I also felt about this particular film. I feel like the Daniel Destin Cretton and MCU never have decided not to hold back anybody. Even the way the Hawk finally evolved into the Savage Hawk that we really know, not just the Professor Hawk. Even as Professor Hawk, he was very lethal. He was very deadly. But then finally, he became the Hulk that we all knew, and not just that, but he was, some even in the cinemas were saying that he looks much bigger than he ever was in even Avengers, the Avengers one. So yes, he looks very menacing and quite bulky in this particular one. And I feel like even just as they did with the Hulk, they did same with the Jean Grey and the Spider-Man. It looks like now they are not going to nerf any of the characters. They are allowing them all to possess the superhero power levels that they need. I don't know whether that is to prep them for Secret Wars or even Avengers Doomsday, but we know that Tom Holland will not be coming in Doomsday. Maybe he might have a cameo in it, but he will not be in it. But definitely for Secret Wars. But I like how they never held back their abilities and their powers so that they could go all out and do the best that they can. And I like how they did it because a lot of us did complain of how the Hulk seems to have been nerfed in terms of his powers. It was sort of toned down just to serve a plot. But this time around, the Hulk was not treated in that manner. Neither was Tom Holland's character. As a matter of fact, now Tom Holland is Peter Parker is far stronger, much, much stronger than who he was in the Civil War or Doomsday. And not just that, but he is also matured as a character. You could clearly tell how he has grown over the years from being the young high schooler to now a college graduate who is now a fully grown man. And the chemistry between him and Zendaya, even Zendaya as a character has evolved. She's now grown, now matured, and the chemistry between all of them, the friendship between the trio, or maybe should we call them three musketeers, was quite amazing. There's a whole lot in this film, and maybe at a later time I may find time to break it down, maybe do some comparative analysis between this film and others. But one thing I can say for sure is that the bar at which Marvel has set this film to be, both Marvel and Sony, I think they can't drop it below that. And it is quite exciting to see what they are doing now. But it's also a little bit cause of worry because then it will mean that every story that they have to develop now must must be more than what we know or what we have seen in the Spider-Man brand new day. It has to be potent. It has to be more stronger, more equipped story-wise and as a whole. But I think Daniel Destin Cretton has done a great job. I can't imagine what lies ahead of him next. and he indeed proved that he is the right filmmaker for this. And amazingly, if you've ever watched the behind the scenes and interviews of this particular Brand New Day, production, you realize that Tom Holland, as an individual, played a very significant role in this, and his acting is top notch. And not just his acting, you could see that he went all out to support everybody to bring their A game. And indeed, that was the case. Indeed, that was the case. It is really a brilliant movie. I wish I can. I'm sure there's a lot that I've forgotten, but in time to come, I'll be doing much more of the breakdown when it's very needed to be done. So this is my spoiler review on the Spider-Man Brand New Day. It is quite an excellent production, honestly. It is one of the best I've seen in the MCU for a long while, and it's very refreshing. It doesn't feel like a repetitiveness of what we've already seen. This feels fresh and different. And yes, for those who are the diehard Spider-Man comic book fans, and then the diehard Spider-Man game fans, I'm sure you see elements of similarities in the comic books panels together with or covers together with some action sequences in the games as well. And it is quite exciting. And I like how it was not just done to appease fans, but the story was well told, and that is what gets me very excited. So all too soon, I've come to the end of this episode of the Film Mandate. Uh, this spoiler review. Let me know what you think about you know what the brand new day Spider-Man stories, the spoilers I've given you so far. If you've watched it, what do you think about it? Do you think indeed this is really a well-deserved MCU film that perhaps Marvel needs to focus on in building their stories in this manner? Yes, of course, it's a Sony film, production, but it is done, particularly the creative aspect is really handled by Marvel, and it's quite excellent. Whatever your thoughts may be, kindly leave it in the comment section below. My name is Papa O2, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.